It was a crisp autumn evening when Emma first stumbled upon the hidden path. She had always loved the forest behind her grandmother's house, the towering trees and rustling leaves offering a sense of calm she could never quite find in the city. As a child, she would wander the familiar trails, but after her grandmother's passing, the woods had become a place of melancholy, a reminder of her loss. This evening, however, something felt different. A soft breeze carried the earthy scent of pine, and the sun, low on the horizon, painted the sky with shades of gold and pink. Emma, still grieving but hoping for a brief respite, found herself walking deeper into the woods than she usually did. Her feet crunched through the fallen leaves as she pushed forward, past the well-trodden paths, seeking something new. The forest seemed to open up before her, revealing a narrow trail she hadn't noticed before. It was covered with moss and twisted vines, as if nature itself had been keeping it hidden. Curious, Emma took a cautious step forward. The path beckoned her like a whispered invitation, and she felt a strange pull, as if something was waiting for her. As she walked, the sounds of the forest faded. The usual rustle of leaves, chirping of birds, and distant calls of animals were replaced by a heavy silence. The only sound was her footsteps on the soft earth, which seemed to echo unnaturally, loud in the stillness. Emma glanced around, feeling a twinge of unease, but the pull of the path was too strong to ignore. She walked for what felt like hours, but the sun never dipped below the horizon. Time seemed suspended in this hidden corner of the world, and Emma felt as though she had crossed into a different reality. The trees here were ancient, their trunks gnarled and twisted with age. Moss hung from their branches, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth. Eventually, the path opened into a small clearing, and Emma gasped as she saw what lay before her. In the center of the clearing stood a stone, well overgrown with ivy and moss. The stone was weathered and cracked, but there was something oddly beautiful about it. It seemed out of place in the middle of the forest, as if it had been there for centuries, waiting for someone to discover it. Without thinking, Emma approached the well, her heart pounding in her chest. She leaned over the edge and peered into the darkness below. The air around her seemed to grow colder, and she shivered, suddenly aware of the isolation she felt in this mysterious place. The well was deep, much deeper than she had expected. It was almost as if the darkness within stretched beyond the limits of the earth. Emma felt an overwhelming urge to drop something into the well, to test its depth, but as her hand reached into her pocket for a coin, something caught her eye. On the stone ledge of the well, just beside her, was a small, weathered book. It was bound in faded leather, its pages yellowed with age. She couldn't remember seeing it there a moment ago, and yet it felt as if it had always been there, waiting for her to notice. Emma hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. But the curiosity that had led her down this path urged her to reach out and take the book. She carefully lifted it, feeling the weight of it in her hands. The cover was cold to the touch, and as she opened it, a strange sensation washed over her, like stepping into a memory that wasn't her own. The pages were filled with intricate sketches and symbols she didn't recognize. Some were like maps, others like cryptic drawings, but they all seemed to form a pattern, one that hinted at something hidden in the world around her. Her eyes skimmed the pages, and then they stopped on one particular drawing. It was a sketch of a well, identical to the one she was standing next to, but in the drawing, a figure stood beside the well, cloaked in shadow, with eyes that seemed to glow with an unnatural light. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The figure in the drawing looked like ... Her hands shook as she turned the page, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the book. The next page showed a scene of the forest, her grandmother's forest, with the same well in the center. But the trees around it were twisted, their branches reaching out like fingers, and the sky above was filled with swirling clouds. "I wasn't expecting that," Emma whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. She turned the pages faster, now unable to stop herself. Each page seemed to reveal more of the strange world she had stumbled into. The well, the forest, and the shadowy figure, everything seemed to be leading her somewhere, but she didn't know where. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled. The air around her grew thick, charged with an energy she couldn't explain. Emma looked up, her heart racing. The trees seemed to sway, not from the wind, but from something else. Something alive. The shadowy figure from the book appeared before her, emerging from the darkness of the forest. It was tall and cloaked, its face hidden in shadow, but Emma could feel its presence as if it were right next to her. The figure raised its hand, and in that moment, Emma knew that she had been expected, that this was no coincidence. She wanted to run, to escape, but her feet were rooted to the spot. The figure spoke, its voice low and echoing, as though it came from the depths of the earth itself. "You have found the path," it said, its voice resonating within her chest. "You are the one who will release what has been trapped for centuries." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The figure's words were a riddle, and she felt an overwhelming sense of dread settle over her. "I wasn't expecting that," she muttered again, her mind spinning with questions. But as she looked at the figure, she realized there was no turning back. She had come too far to retreat now. The figure reached out, and Emma instinctively stepped backward, but it was too late. The world around her shifted, and in an instant, everything went dark. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself standing before the well. The forest was silent, the air thick with an unsettling calm. The book was gone, and the shadowy figure had vanished. Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. The forest seemed as it always had, but something had changed. She wasn't the same as she had been when she first entered the woods, and she knew that the path she had taken was only the beginning.